What's up, everybody? Welcome into another YouTube live show. I am John Kurtz, here and ready to attack the college football offseason, which we are in essence in. I know the season isn't technically over. We've still got the college football playoff coming up. We still have bowl games coming up, but feels a little bit weird today. Coming to you on a Sunday without actual games to talk about, without a thrilling Big 12 championship game to talk about, like I did last week. But that does not mean that there is nothing going on, because we do obviously have plenty. As you can see from the title of the video, some of this is going to revolve around conference realignment and the good old Pac-12. Our friends in the Pac-12, we have some news out of the Pac-12. I say news. News, speculation, whatever it is that you want to call it. George Kliavkoff is certainly taking more grenades. That is a fact. Poor George is now taking them from Bob Thompson, who we've talked about plenty of times here on the channel. In fact, I've interviewed him here on the channel before. Former head of Fox Sports. He is somebody that is still pretty ingrained in what's going on right now, and I appreciate that he tweets and offers his insight and opinions into what's going on. And man, he had something to say to John Canzano about that Deion Sanders quote from Kliavkoff, that Sanders would add value to the TV contract. He also took issue with one of Kliavkoff's excuses for not having a deal done yet, which was him saying that basically the TV industry doesn't work the second half of December. So there's a lot going on there, and this is not the Big 12 throwing grenades this time. This is in fact the former head of Fox Sports that is throwing grenades. Plus, the tease of the video today is a little bit of an update on, you might be able to guess it, San Diego State. San Diego State. This one comes from Canzano. He got a mailbag question about where San Diego State would like to be in light of Brett Yormark's comments that we talked about last week, which were that the Big 12 is definitely still trying to move into that Pacific time zone. And so the question was framed to Canzano, like, all right, should we worry about San Diego State? And Canzano gave actually what I would think is a pretty accurate representation, I think, of the situation there. But I don't think it means it's a shoe-in for the Pac-12 or anything like that. So we're going to discuss that on the show today. I do want to talk a lot about Duggan and the Heisman. Max Duggan finishes second in the Heisman, which comes as no surprise. I think everybody anticipated Caleb Williams was going to win that. Duggan, well, he wasn't really very close to first, was pretty soundly the second place choice for the award, which I was at least happy to see for Duggan. And I think when it comes down to, like, did he deserve it? Should he have won it? It all depends on how you actually view this award and look at this award. And it reminded me of the 2012 Heisman race, which was Johnny Manziel winning it, Colin Klein finishing third, he and Manti Te'o, the other two finalists there. But I went through this whole debate with K-State fans back in 2012 about how you view the Heisman as to who deserves it and who should get it. And I think a similar storyline played out here for Duggan. The good news is it's still another nice run of publicity and attention for the Big 12 to have the second place finisher for the Heisman this year. We had KU Mizzou playing in basketball. We had Eli Drinkwitz, one of my least favorite coaches out there, embarrassing himself a little bit. We've got early Heisman favorites for 2023 that include 4 Big 12 quarterbacks. ESPN, let me go look through how many actually made this list, because it was not that many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. There are 14 players on this list. 4 of them are Big 12 quarterbacks. None of them are your reigning Big 12 champion quarterback, Will Howard, who statistically was as efficient as almost anybody in the country at quarterback once he took over the starting job for K-State this year. So, a little chip on the shoulder for the Cats, but I think it speaks to what this league may look like next year. So I think that opens up a very interesting conversation as well. So as you can see, a lot on the board here tonight to discuss, but you guys, if you've been here before, you know how these live chats work. You can control a lot of the content here today, and you can do so by clicking the $ below the chat box where it says say something. That is how you donate. It will pin your chat up at the top for me. Make sure that I get to it. Make sure that I read it out there. So it is a way to ensure that your question or comment gets read on the chat here tonight. 150 plus people in here already. It's going to be too busy, too jam-packed for me to get to much of anything else. So if you want to get your question or comment on the show, click the $ below the chat box where it says say something. Also a way that you just support the channel and support me being able to bring you Big 12 content on a week in, week out basis here, which is much, much appreciated. Could not do it without your guys' help. And if you want to help without spending a dime, just simply give me one click. That's all I ask from you. One click. If you could just go click the like button on this video, I would very much appreciate it. That really helps me out as well. And if you're watching after the fact, like the video, comment, leave me a comment. Whether you agree with me or think I'm the worst, plenty of both, go ahead and leave that in the comment. All that helps with the YouTube algorithm. So I appreciate all of you guys that do that. What else do we have here? Oh, if you are catching it after the fact, on Venmo, you can support me on Venmo as well. It's John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you'd like to go that route as well. Okay. I do think, now I understand some of you may be coming here looking simply for the San Diego State blurb from John Canzano here. I will get to that. I promise. And I'm going to try and stop being lazy after the video here. I will go in and timestamp this. Now I'm going to force myself to, now that I'm saying this. I will timestamp it. So if you want to jump ahead to that and you're not watching this live, you certainly can. But before we get to all of that, I do have a donation to get to. But I just want to start with Duggan and the Heisman. It's fresh in our minds. We watched it last night, and I do have plenty of takes on the Heisman, even if it may be a little bit, I don't know if like overrated is the wrong word, but it's just underwhelming. Like I watched the ceremony, or at least part of it, and I made it through about 10, 15, more like 20 minutes of it. And I was just like, I don't know. It's just a little corny, overproduced. Not something that I want to sit there and really watch the whole time. It's like, just give me the winners. Let me know who won this thing. But there are a lot of insights that you can draw from it. Anyway, before I get to that, let me check in here with Ema Tom, who is the first to donate tonight. Thank you, Ema Tom. Ema Tom says, no hot takes today, but just want to thank you for helping build this community. Actually starting to like our conference mates, except KU and Flood Aggie. Flood Aggie, a reference there to Iowa State. Hey, Tom, I appreciate it, man. And that is something that's been really cool to see here. I do feel like we have developed an awesome community, and people starting to, whether it's either like or dislike, just get to know their fellow Big 12 fan bases, right? I think this has been a nice mingling spot for people to get to know what the other Big 12 fan bases are like. So even if you don't like KU or Iowa State, I appreciate that you're taking a liking to everybody else. And hey, I mean, the good news right now is that for all parties involved, the Big 12 is hot. The Big 12 is hot. And that is the segue into the Max Duggan conversation, because if we're looking at the overall scope of what this league is doing right now, you've got back-to-back years with a new Big 12 team in the playoff, right? This year it's TCU. Last year it was Cincinnati. You've got back-to-back years with no Oklahoma or Texas in the Big 12 championship game. You've got back-to-back years of a huge rating in the Big 12 championship game. We saw that the peak of the Big 12 title game this year was higher than any other conference championship game. And now you've got a non-Oklahoma or Texas Heisman finalist and Heisman runner-up in Max Duggan this year. So the Big 12 is hot, man. The league is changing some perceptions out there. I think that much is becoming very, very clear. The Big 12 is slowly but surely starting to change some perceptions a little bit. Would go a long way if TCU can win just one game in the college football playoff, beating Michigan. I mean, I think we can talk more about this as the game gets close, but when was the last time the Big 12 played a football game as important as what TCU is going to play against Michigan? You could really change the dynamic of the narrative about the season and the league one way or the other based on what happens there. If this is LSU Oklahoma 2019, you're going to have to fend off all the crap once again from everybody. If it turns into a win, now it's like you pushed all your chips into the center of the table and just hit. You took down the dealer and you just got a mountain of chips back. So it would be a mountain of credibility if TCU can go out and win that game. But anyway, I do have some other donations here. I'm sorry, I got distracted there for a minute. But Duggan finishes second in the Heisman. So I'll get to you, Calico, Willie, and Steven in just a moment. But Duggan finishes second in the Heisman voting. He had Caleb Williams had 2,031 total points. Duggan was 1,420. So that's not like a razor-thin margin or anything by any stretch of the imagination. Duggan had 188 first-place votes to 500 plus. It was 544. In fact, for Caleb Williams. So 544 to 188 in terms of first place votes, not very close at all. You're talking about basically 3 times the first place votes there for Caleb Williams. No one else had more than 37. So again, pretty clear cut that Max Duggan is your second place in the Heisman here. Every region, you could go by the regions. I even have a region breakdown here. Ralph Russo put this nice map on Twitter for us. Midwest, Williams Duggan. Northeast, Williams Duggan. Mid-Atlantic, Williams Duggan. South, Williams Duggan. Southwest, Williams Duggan. Far West, Williams Duggan. Closest would be the Southwest there, where Caleb Williams got 349. and Max Duggan had 308. So that makes sense, right? Home territory there. That included Texas. So in his home territory, he got a little bit extra of a bump, but not enough to win the award. Look, I did not go in with any disillusions or delusions of grandeur that Max Duggan was going to win this thing. I frankly am, just based on what my expectation was of the thing, very happy that he finished second, because I was worried that somebody else was going to slip in there, which would have been very stupid, because that's the thing. I mean, it's like, to me, it was two and then everybody else. CJ Stroud, he's a good player. He gets held up by the brand, and he has a ton of skill talent around him. Like, he's fine. Like, that's all right, whatever. That feels a lot like just, hey, let's go give it to this flashy name that we know because he plays for Ohio State. Stetson Bennett, look, nothing against Stetson Bennett at all. The guy is he's a good story. He has done a lot for himself. But the fact that some want to hold him up like he is legitimately one of the top 3 or 4 players in the country, the guy is just driving a Porsche. It goes fast. Yes, that's not Stetson Bennett. That's all the horsepower in the engine, man. All he's doing is pushing the pedal. So that's my view on Stetson Bennett. And I was very, I saw like Barrett Sally, a couple of guys who had Stetson Bennett second on their ballot and Duggan not in the top 3, which just, I mean, come on. You can't be doing that. I did see John Wilner had Caleb Williams and then Duggan second. Happy to see that. Shout out to John Wilner for that. I got no problem with that being your ballot. But the interesting part here, the dynamics at play, is that this is just like total opposites, right? I mean, Caleb Williams and Max Duggan could not represent like more opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of what they are and what they bring to the table. Like Caleb Williams, the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. Max Duggan, like tough, gritty guy who wasn't even the starter heading into this year. Caleb Williams was a magnet for attention going back to last offseason when everybody was waiting to see where he was going to go. He follows Lincoln Riley, which was the most high-profile story in college football last year anyway. So it was just, the whole thing was just draped in media attention and stardom for Caleb Williams, where Max Duggan was completely unassuming. Even if you just look at the guy himself, his mannerisms, I mean, everything I feel like was embodied by the picture of all 4 of those guys in Times Square. If you saw that on social media, like on Twitter, all 4 of them are out there, and Caleb Williams, along with CJ Stroud, was wearing like a jumpsuit, some athleisure, if you will, athleisure kind of wear. There was, there's a lot of swag from those 2 guys. And then Max Duggan, he's kind of dressed like a dad in his 40s, like some jeans, a polo, and a jacket. Very much his style compared to what Caleb Williams was. 2 guys that are totally, totally different. One, like very humble, grinder, worker guy. The other writes F Utah out on his fingernails, right? I mean, these were completely different players and completely different personalities. And, to be honest, if you take this scenario most of the time to the table, the flashy guy is going to win. And I'm not even saying that is wrong here. But I do think who you're going to vote for depends on like how you actually interpret this award. And I go back again to 2012, and it was Colin Klein and Johnny Manziel was the source of a lot of debate in K-State circles. I mean, I'm doing a radio show in Manhattan at that point. It was okay. Everybody kept going back to this official mission statement of the Heisman, right? Which says, winners epitomize great ability combined with diligence, perseverance, and hard work. So great ability combined with diligence, perseverance, and hard work. That is in that Heisman mission statement. A lot of people at that point in time in 2012 are talking about like the character thing. And look, if we're talking about character, I mean, it's not even close between what we know now about Johnny Manziel, what we know now about Colin Klein, who's doing a fabulous job as K-State's offensive coordinator, by the way. But I was not somebody that got overly hung up on that. I was not as upset as most of my fellow K-State brethren were at that point that he didn't win the Heisman, because I thought, look, if you're going for like legitimately the best player, the guy that I would take like number 1 in a draft that year, I probably would have gone Manziel. And for sure this year, if I'm starting from scratch in a draft, like who do I think is the best player in college football that I would be able to build around and win games? It's Caleb Williams. I mean, that is definitely who I would take. He's kind of a mini Mahomes. I think it's going to be fascinating to watch him in the NFL and see how, I was going to say his shtick, which is probably unfair, but just see how his style, see how his style plays in the NFL. It will be very interesting, but it seems like it's going to work very well. And he's a blast to watch. He's really fun. He is clearly the most talented player. But if we are talking about, let me go back to this statement again so I don't mess it up. Diligence, perseverance, and hard work. If you're literally going to take the mission statement to its core and like by the book, interpret it like that, then I mean, how do you go against Max Duggan? Because for starters, he wasn't even the starter going into this year, right? That was Chandler Morris. He gets hurt in the third quarter of the Colorado game at the beginning of the year. Duggan comes in, never looks back, takes over, was phenomenal, over 3,000 yards passing, 30 touchdowns, 4 picks. I mean, the stats were not the best in the country, but they were pretty damn good for Duggan, and he had a gaudy statistical season. Then let's think back to the end of things, right? The end of his 2022 season, at least to now, Big 12 championship game. He is literally like so beaten up and exhausted that he's having to wave teammates off as he runs off the field because he's just that battered and bruised and put his body on the line and showed that much toughness to get to where he was in that game and will his team into overtime. And I actually rewatched the broadcast this weekend, made it all the way through for the first time since the game actually happened. And I was listening to, I mean, it felt like Fowler and Herbstreit kind of had determined by that point before the game was even over. Like, oh man, Duggan had his Heisman moment, right? Like that's the Heisman moment, win or lose, no matter what happens. And I would tend to agree. And so again, if you're going off of that Heisman mission statement, that really fits in there. But we're not even telling the full story there. We're also talking about a guy who didn't transfer in an era where that is all that these kids do in college football, right? Is transfer if you're not going to be the starter. He had been the starter there before. The coach that he came to play for left, like all these different things that would induce almost anybody in college football this day and age to leave. He didn't. He stayed there because he loved the school so much. Again, hard work, perseverance. And then on top of all of that, what about the heart condition? Back in 2020, doctors discovered that Duggan had a rare abnormality in his heart called Wolff Parkinson White syndrome. It turned out he had the condition since birth. It required a procedure if he was going to be able to play football. And he did. He came back, I think it was less than 4 weeks after the surgery, came back and was playing college football. Just unbelievable. If we're talking about hard work, perseverance, those attributes, Caleb Williams does not hold a candle to Max Duggan there. But in the end, I would just say whichever route you want to go with it, whichever way you want to interpret that, I think is fine. I think they're both deserving winners of the Heisman. Either way that would have gone. I think if you held me down to it and people who listened to me in 2012 would be very mad because at the time I was like, look, I mean, I'd probably vote Manziel too. It sucks. I'd love for Colin to win it. But I think it'd probably go Duggan just because, look, I watched the game in person at AT&T Stadium in Dallas, and it was unbelievable what he did against a very good K-State defense after being battered and bruised and having 85 rushing yards on one drive at the end of the game there to get his team into overtime. It was insane. So I would give it to him with Caleb Williams second, but I also understand that if I were taking a player out of this entire field just to draft somebody, it's going to be Caleb Williams. I think he's the best talent. I think he would be the best quote unquote player, but it's, how do you want to determine what we're voting for here? And I kind of, a part of the reason that in 2012, I said, look, I would just lean to taking Manziel and the best players because I do think you get into trouble if you're going to leave the award open to something other than just who do you think is the best player, and you're using words like hard work, grit, determination, character, like what? Okay, well, if we're going to do like the hard work and determination award, like just make that a different award, like make that the hard work, determination, and perseverance award, and give that to somebody else, and then give one to the best player. I just think it gets really pretty convoluted, and you open things up to a lot of subjectivity. If you do it that way. But I understand a lot of people want to. And look, Duggan, either way, even if you're just going like best player, most valuable player, that could be another way. If you're determining most valuable player, if you took Caleb Williams off of USC and Max Duggan off of TCU, where do those teams go? I think that's probably a healthy debate on either side as to who would be more valuable to their team. We saw what USC was last year before Duggan showed up. Duggan was there at TCU last year, but we saw what he meant to this team this year. Anyway, there's a lot of angles you can break that down from. I think in the end, thrilled really that Duggan got second. Would have loved for him to win it, but didn't expect it. I think Caleb Williams as a winner is fine. Anybody who voted Stetson Bennett or CJ Stroud or even Hendon Hooker, although I can understand Hendon Hooker more than the previous two that I just mentioned. If you put Hendon Hooker above Max Duggan, I wouldn't crush you for it. If you put Stetson Bennett above Max Duggan, I will and did absolutely crush you for it. And same story with CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud just feels kind of lazy. That feels like a lazy pick there to put into the top three. And look, I saw like Bijan Robinson finished. He did finish in the top 10. I know a lot of people in Big 12 country had him in their top three on the ballots. And in terms of like just talents, like players that I saw this year, I mean, Bijan Robinson, I think absolutely is in the top five, probably the top three. But the way I would evaluate it is in college football and in football in general these days, a quarterback is just so much more valuable than a running back is. And the whole problem, like Texas fans, Sark, everybody's been whining about, well, Bijan should be in New York. And if we had won more games, he'd be in New York and blah, blah, blah. That's part of the problem with running back. Bijan can't put the ball in his own hands. He's got to get it from somebody else, and Sark has to call the play that gets him the ball. You're just not as valuable as a quarterback. You are not as valuable to a team as a quarterback is, and so that does devalue it a little bit to me. Does that make the award a little bit more boring where it's all quarterbacks? Yes, it does. But I think we're just in such a different day and age of football where the scales are tilted so much to quarterbacks and the impact that they have on the game that I think that's the accurate way to do it. So no problem with anybody voting Bijan because, again, if we're talking about just pure talent, I mean, I think Caleb Williams and Bijan Robinson, it'd be hard to argue against them as being two of the top five, certainly in the country in terms of pure talent, like raw talent. But not a quarterback, it's going to be a little bit tougher. Now, maybe if Sark had actually just lined up and slammed it into the line 30 times with Bijan Robinson every game this year, he would be up there. And I'm certain that Texas would have won more than 8 games if that were the case. But hey, thanks, Sark. I appreciate the Big 12 title, man. I got some T-shirts. I got some Big 12 title gear this weekend. So, Sark, if you want some of that, I'll toss you a T-shirt. Thank you for not running Bijan Robinson 30 times a game and letting Quinn Ewers go out and throw it 49 times in Stillwater. Really appreciate that. That was a nice gift. Nice gift given to me and all the Cat fans out there. So appreciate that. Thank you, Sark. All gas, no brakes, baby. All right, let's get to some donations here. Appreciate all of you guys that are here. If you want to join the party and donate and control some of the content here tonight, make your voice be heard, click the $ below the chat box where it says say something. That is how you do that. We are going to get to, I promise, if you saw the tease on the video, we will be getting to here the San Diego State blurb from John Canzano, where he discussed the Big 12 and the Pac-12 potentially jockeying for San Diego State there. Calico Willie. What's up, Calico Willie? Calico Willie says he's already fiending for Wildcat football. Season went by way too fast. I'm excited to see the Cats versus the Huskers in KC on Saturday, though. Let's hope, Calico Willie. Nebraska's been playing some really good basketball, which sounds very weird to say. But they got kind of screwed against Purdue, who's been playing like the best team in the country. And before that, beat Creighton. So it'll be tough, but that should be a really fun environment, actually, I think, on Saturday. And yes, it is, man, it hit me this weekend. I was like, I've got suddenly nothing going on after running and traveling to Manhattan and Arlington the last couple of weeks. I was like, it's a Saturday. I've got really nothing to do except run some errands, and there's no games on. Like there was Army Navy, I guess. That could be a whole other discussion. I'm fine with the spectacle of it. I can't get into watching the game. So I didn't really watch much. And yeah, it does suck that is gone. Like, as a fan, I'm in the moment so much with K-State and chasing this Big 12 title and so excited and nervous and anxious. I'm not really thinking about the fact that, like, hey, the entire college football season is about to just evaporate in front of your eyes. You will not have games anymore on Saturday. That does suck, Calico Willie. But you're right. We got some hoops. We got the highlights. We got the memories, right? All of that we'll be able to draw upon from this season. Steven, what's up, Steven? Steven says, what teams did they say are willing to join the Big 12 from the Pac-12? Well, there was none of that. We're talking about San Diego State here, Steven. So Steven's comment is going to launch us into that. Let's see. It was from John Canzano's mailbag, and it was about the comments that Brett Yormark made earlier in the week. So those obviously reverberated a little bit around the college football world, not just the Rose Bowl comments, which had some folks certainly triggered. The college football purists that really love the Rose Bowl. And Brett Yormark said he did not like the Rose Bowl putting themselves above the greater good of the game, which I did see, actually. I mean, I saw plenty of pushback on Yormark on those comments, by the way, which was basically, they were just calling hypocrisy, saying that every league, every conference commissioner is out there for their own interest as opposed to the greater good of the game, which, you know what? Like, fair enough. I understand why people would say that. I still think he's right about the Rose Bowl, but if you're going to say wrong messenger because you're a conference commissioner, like, okay, fine. Fair enough. But I think we're also talking, well, anyway, I'll leave it at that. I can understand that criticism. I'm just glad somebody finally got on the Rose Bowl for it because it seemed like they were untouchable from some corners of the college football world that would not say anything about the Rose Bowl being just a pain in the rear end for everybody in college football at that point. But Yormark also said once again that the Big 12 wants to get into that Pacific time zone. They want to be out there. And so there was some concern apparently in Pac 12 country about the Big 12 going after San Diego State to take that away from the Pac 12. Because I think like everything that you read right now from Wilner Canzano would seem to indicate that, the likely timeline here is like early 2023. Pac 12 gets, well, I guess the first thing that will happen is this upcoming week. Regents make a final decision on UCLA. They still say 5 to 10% chance is it that UCLA would be summoned back to the Pac 12 by the Board of Regents. So they're probably still going to be going on to the Big 10, but we have not had that finality yet. So you get that finality, get to the end of the year through the holidays, then the Pac 12 will put together some kind of TV deal. Then expansion would happen after that. So there seems to be kind of like an order, a process that's going to happen before they would go grab a San Diego State, but that remains at the top of the list there. So I guess the question would be now, if Yormark's going to continue pushing that, and he also said like he would expect something in the not too distant future, then Pac-12 fans said, well, could it be San Diego State? Could he be going to get San Diego State right now and use that as a shot against the bow of the Pac-12 to go ahead and take that school right now? So the question in the mailbag was, given Brett Yormark's statement about wanting to play games in the Pacific time zone, do you think the Pac-12 should be concerned about the Big 12 scooping up San Diego State and other options? Interesting that other options are included there. I doubt that that's referring to any four corner schools because I think especially in light of the Utah AD's comment last week, nobody is expecting that to happen anytime soon. Except for Tim Brando, who is making the rounds saying that Colorado will be leaving it back. Don't get me started there. The answer from Canzano was San Diego State gets a vote in this too, maybe the most important one. I did some poking around. The Aztecs may use the Big 12 as leverage, but I came away from my conversations with key sources thinking that San Diego State covets Pac-12 membership. All things being equal, I'm told, San Diego State would like to be in the Pac-12. So how about that? Canzano says that San Diego State could be using the Big 12 as a leverage play here if the Big 12 is genuinely interested. That is interesting. Now, I understand how you would say, all right, Pac-12 spin. Of course, the Pac-12 is going to come and say that that's Big 12. Yeah, right. You wish you're not going to land these guys. It would just be leverage if they're going to actually talk about this. I do actually think he is correct, though. That last line, I'm sure, is correct. All things being equal, San Diego State would like to be in the Pac-12. Yes, if the money and stability and long-term future is equal, I'm sure they would love to be in the Pac-12 where the travel is less. They're just basically in their home area as opposed to having to send different sports like Olympic sports all the way to Morgantown, West Virginia, for example. So I'm sure it would make a lot more sense for them to just stay closer to home. Would you rather travel long distances or would you rather be closer to home if you're having to do it for work all the time, right? That seems like a pretty easy answer there. So I get why it's framed that way. I also can understand why San Diego State would say, look, if we suddenly have two conferences after us, it would make sense to use one for leverage against the other. San Diego State should do that. They absolutely should. But I think the real question to me would be, what happens when the rubber meets the road? What happens when an actual offer is put on the table in front of San Diego State? Like if the Big 12, and I'm not even saying that I would advocate for this, but if the Big 12 decided tomorrow, hey, we're going to go add Gonzaga in basketball and we'll add San Diego State in everything. Like we'll go make those moves. Yormark decides that's the way to go. If an offer were put on the table in front of San Diego State next week, what are they actually going to do? Because that is a school that has been fighting for a while now to try and get up a level, to try and level themselves up, to try and get into a Power 5 conference. Yes, I'm sure all things being equal, they would love to be in the Pac-12, but if there's no guarantee of that happening, if things still seem shaky, if they're like, look, man, I don't know what's going on with UCLA. I don't know what's going on with Oregon and Washington. I don't know what's happening with any of this. Amazon, like, what are you guys doing for your TV deal? This still hasn't happened. Kliavkoff, you seem a little shaky here. I'm looking at everybody taking shots at you right now. I know that Brett Yormark got a TV deal done. I know that this guy has a history of completing major business deals and really upping the value of entities that he's controlled. I know that this league is as stable as any league out there right now, not named the SEC or the Big Ten. So why would I not sign on the dotted line right now when I have this contract in front of me? Even if I would rather not have to travel to Morgantown, West Virginia, or Fort Worth or whatever, I've got this contract in front of me right now. I can ensure that I'm finally going to make that jump. That would be my real question here. They can say what they want to say right now, but when the pressure is on and you actually are staring that in the face, would you be willing to make the decision to wait and just say, nah, leverage play here, Brett. Sorry, we're going to stick around for the Pac-12 and take our chances with that future? Because more and more people right now seem to be seeing through some of this act from George Kliavkoff. And maybe it's not fair of me to say an act, but they are at least poking holes in his strategy right now and how he's conducting himself, and not the most confident in where this is going long-term for the Pac-12. So if San Diego State is not there, would they actually use the Big 12 as leverage and not sign on the dotted line there? Anyway, that was the update from Canzano on the San Diego State front. It does seem, I mean, I will say this for all the San Diego State folks that have frequented this channel over the last year and a half, or those that have communicated with me on Twitter or whatever. I mean, it seems like you're in a pretty good spot. I know it's probably a really long waiting game right now for San Diego State to have to sit around and wait for whatever it is that's going to happen, whatever the final decision is going to be. But it does seem almost inevitable at this point that San Diego State is going to be a part of a Power 5 conference within the next year or two, at least. And I guess when I say be a part of it, it doesn't mean that they would be playing those games, but they would at least have that decision done and not have to worry about it. And there's nothing I see anywhere that would say that, particularly from a Pac-12 standpoint, that there's anybody else in front of them in the line to get into the league. They're going to be okay there. So hope that answers your question, Stephen. Hope that answers your question. Nothing about the four corners. But that's what I got for you. Jason, what's up, Jason? Jason says, Duggan would have still lost if he scored the TD. Yeah, I agree with you there. Like, I don't, and he's referring, of course, to the touchdown where he was just inches short before K-State's goal line stand in the Big 12 championship game. Yeah, even if they come back to win and they win in overtime, I don't think it makes much difference at all. I mean, one, because we still have Heisman voters that vote before conference championship weekend, which I hate. But them's the breaks. That's how it goes. I would rather have everybody watch all the way through there. But also, it was what I said earlier. Like, the Heisman moment felt like it already happened. The Heisman moment was to get the game tied. It was already a great game. People have enough respect for K-State. Maybe not everybody in the college football world, but, top 10 team in the college football playoff rankings, right? So it's not like they lost to a nobody. I think it was pretty much decided at that point, and that he had done enough to prove his worth as a Heisman finalist, and Caleb Williams won it by a lot. We just rattled off there. It was like 700 points. You were not going to close that gap just by finishing off a win over K-State. That was not going to do it. I think like the only thing that could have actually changed that is if we were to wait until after the college football playoff and then you went out and beat Michigan and Duggan had a big game. That to me is like the only thing that could have made up that sort of a gap against Caleb Williams. So I agree with you there, Jason. Definitely agree with you. Joe, what's up, Joe? Thank you for the donation, my friend. Appreciate it as always, Joe. Very, very generous. Thank you. Joe says, weird playoffs, Michigan and TCU, Ohio State and Georgia. It is a bit weird. I mean, Michigan, I guess you could look at it one way and say, well, Michigan made it last year, and then Georgia and Ohio State, they're a part of the mainstays at the top of the college football world right now. TCU is definitely a weird entry there. But, I also think even though Michigan did it last year, most people didn't really believe in them to do it again this year and beat Ohio State and get to the point that they are at, especially if you would have told everybody that Blake Corum wouldn't have been a part of it, wouldn't have been a part of the Ohio State win and actually getting them there. And same story with the Big Ten championship game. So, yes, a little bit weird in that regard. And certainly if you would have 2 years ago, or like 2020, if you would have said, hey, this will be the college football playoff in 2022, TCU, Michigan, and then Ohio State and Georgia, it would definitely look very weird. I love the fact that the last 2 years we've had new blood coming from, yes, Jim Harbaugh, but also the good old Big 12, the new Big 12, helping formulate some new blood there in the playoff. But if you want to truly make a perception difference, and I'll continue to beat this drum, and I was already beating it earlier in the show, TCU needs to at the very, very least, make it a very competitive game against Michigan and preferably win there if you want to actually do anything. Now, we're going to go to a 12-team playoff, and that'll just rock the whole dynamics of everything here pretty soon, but you can still go a long way toward building up some credibility with an actual win here. Otherwise, people will just roll their eyes and look at it and be like, you hear the critics out there that will say, well, just this would be a great year for the BCS. We know who the top two teams are. Just have them go play Georgia and Michigan. Just have them go play for a national championship. We don't need any of this other stuff. We can rotate who the third and fourth team is going to be, have them go get crushed. That's fine. So if you want to dispel that narrative, and even people who say that the 12-team playoff is too much and dumb and not what we need and devalues all that criticism, which I don't really agree with. I'm here for the 12-team playoff. At least we're seeing some signs that there might be a little more parity in this thing, and that there is a chance that the transfer portal in particular is helping to shrink the talent gap a bit, allowing other teams to have more of a seat at the table. But unless you do actually step up and beat somebody there up at the top, it is going to stay the same, where everybody will just say, hey, man, this is cute. It's a cool show, but some of this is just filling TV inventory until we get to the real championship game. Neil, what's up, Neil? Hey, Neil, I appreciate you, man. Neil, thank you for the donation and for the kind words. Neil says, great show, John. You always deliver. It's my guy, Neilio. Thank you, Neil. Appreciate you, my friend, as always. You always deliver too, Neil. You know what? Ditto, my friend. You always deliver as well. Robert asked a question that, of course, I'm going to answer yes to. Robert says, did you see Mahomes no-look pass for a TD? Hell yes, I did. Although my enthusiasm for the play was diminished a little bit by the 3 picks, and the defense just it was gross. I mean, allowing the Broncos to be that close and having to actually stress that game after it was 27-0. It's very frustrating. And I actually just saw a great tweet right before I hopped on here. Let me see if it's still up. It was about being a Chiefs fan. Yeah. From my guy 33 KSU. He said the pressure of Super Bowl or bust has turned Chiefs fans into the dumbest, most emotionally unstable people on earth. And then he said, parentheses, I'm a Chiefs fan. I mean, I feel the same way. I'm a Chiefs fan, and the whole dynamic of everything is very dumb, because we're just it's like held to the standard of like, would this win the Super Bowl? Like, I'm fine with them beating the Broncos by 6, but just the way that it happened makes you feel like, all right, there's some big problems here. When really, in reality, I should be like, look, they're 10-3. I mean, feel pretty good about everything. So yes, it was awesome. I think that was the Mahomesiest play of Mahomes' career. I think that's about the best way to say it. Like, of all the things he's done, because it wasn't just a no-look. It was like a no-look playground, fling it to Jerick McKinnon down the sideline for a touchdown. It was insane. So, yes, I loved it. And you know what? On that point, Robert, if we're going to talk about former Big 12 QBs balling in the NFL, how about this, everybody? Brock Purdy. It may not be Brocktober. Brocksember. Does that work? He outdueled Tom Brady. It's like I've been telling you guys for years on this channel here. Brock Purdy is better than Tom Brady. Been saying it for years. I don't know why I get hate from Iowa State fans all the time. I have told them since day one, that young man that you have leading your program, Brock Purdy, is not overrated at all. In fact, he is underrated, because people should be talking about how he is better than the greatest of all time, Tom Brady. And we all saw that play out today. So I felt like I should take a victory lap on that one. Congratulations to Brock Purdy. And congratulations to me on being right about Brock Purdy being better than Tom Brady out there. Hey, seriously, pretty crazy. Iowa State fans, though, do you watch that? Do you watch that and think, how the hell did we go 7-6 with him and Breece Hall in their last year, and Charlie Kolar and all those guys? How do we go 7-6? And now you're sitting here off a 4-win season with Matt Campbell. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I would be pretty perturbed and frustrated with that if I were you, because I mean, Breece Hall, another guy who's proven that he can play, he can hack it in the league, right? I would be looking at that like, how did things go so south there? But anyway, I don't mean to push your buttons too much there, clones. Enjoy Brock Purdy's performance. He played very well today. Glenn, what's up, Glenn? Glenn says, and thank you for the donation, Glenn, as always. Glenn says, what is the average pay for a coordinator in the Big 12? I would say anywhere between like I mean, you're looking at, if I'm going to give you a wide variance, like 500 grand to, there are some guys that are over a mil, um, somewhere in there. I mean, 500 grand, maybe lowballing that too. I was just trying to think like who would be on the low ends. But yeah, it used to be a huge deal if you had a 7-figure coordinator. That's becoming less and less of a big deal these days. So just off the top of my head, that's what I would say, Glenn. Um, I'm trying, like, was Kwiatkowski at Texas when he came in? I want to say that that was a big deal that he was going to be a 7-figure coordinator. You guys can help me out. I'm sure you guys that are fans of your own team that know if you have 7-figure coordinator. Like, I don't, what did Derek Mason get paid by Oklahoma State when he came in? But I think that's a decent ballpark for you, and hope that does an okay job of answering the question there. Zach, what's up, Zach? Zach says, B. Izzo calls you up and says that K-State has to play all 4 new Big 12 teams in 23, but that you get to pick which 2 are home games. Where are they traveling to? Great question, Zach. Great question. My first thought, just without even diving into like what it means on the football field, is I just want to make the trip to Provo. I would love to go watch K-State play there. The backdrop, the scenery there looks so awesome. I've seen BYU fans handing out free ice cream to visiting fans this year. Like, it just seems like a good time. And it's a state that I've never been to. At least I think I've maybe been in the Salt Lake City airport, but I've never actually like been out there proper and explored. So I want selfishly the trip to Utah, just to go see that. So I would say BYU, I would like to be on the road. And so now I start to think, which other one would I like? I've been to Houston many times, so I really have no desire to go in terms of checking out the city. But what I think, like, if I have to take somebody on the road, I would feel better probably about Dana Holgerson on the road, maybe than the other options. Nothing against UCF or Orlando, but I want no part of the bounce house on the road. That seems like not a fun place to play. That seems like it would be a really tough game. I do not want that. So then I'm down to like Cincinnati and Houston. And there are so many question marks, Zach, with Cincinnati and Satterfield. And we talked about that hire and, maybe a little bit underwhelming. I think I would take Houston on the road just because I feel like that would be the safer bet for like nothing against you, Houston. Hopefully this won't come back to haunt me, but maybe it will. And Houston fans, if you beat K-State next year, feel free to rub it in my face. But I feel like that would be a slightly more winnable game to do it that way. So I'll say make Cincy and UCF come to Manhattan. We'll go to Provo so I can take that trip, and we'll go to Houston to take down Dana Holgerson again. All right, that's what I'm going to do. Boom to the Sooner. What's up, Boom to the Sooner? Boom to the Sooner says, and I appreciate you as always, my friend. Boom to the Sooner says, the rule says we can't make a horns down gesture with our hand, but we can write horns down on our fingernails. Horns down. Does that fit? H? Yeah, I guess that does fit, right? If you're going to use the thumb on one of them, you could go horns down on the old fingernails. Yeah, well, hey, do it. I mean, if you can, find whatever way you can. You know what you should do is like, well, I guess this doesn't totally work. I was going to say write it upside down so that then when you turn the horns down, you would be able to actually read it, but that's going to cover up a couple of the nails, so that wouldn't quite work out. Boom to the Sooner, I will say, you seem to be taking the Heisman deal much better than most of your Oklahoma fan brethren, because message board geniuses, I cannot recommend another Twitter account enough to you than message board geniuses on Twitter, because they just take screenshots from college football message boards, which are a wild place to be. And I don't even mean to like single out Oklahoma fans here, because the message boards for as you see, if you follow this account, and I just know from growing up with the message board community and culture, like literally back to like 2003, 4, when I first started stumbling onto that on the internet. It can be a wild place with a lot of wild takes and wild fans. But it's just a world of entertainment to see what people are thinking. But Oklahoma fans, my God, it's still salty as hell about Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley, and seeing Lincoln Riley tearing up there. I mean, just getting crushed. But guys, the thing that gets me is there are still Oklahoma fans like attacking the ability of Lincoln Riley. I'm like, if you want to attack the character, if you want to, take out your frustrations and say bleep this guy and whatever. okay, like I understand that. I'm still going to make fun of you for it because Oklahoma fans for years have felt like they are above being put in that position by anybody. I'm still going to make fun of you for it, but like I understand that. The attacking the ability after you just went 6-6 with Dylan Gabriel and Brent Venables, like what are we doing there? Because Lincoln clearly is an excellent coach, multiple playoff trips, and he has three Heisman winners in 6 seasons. Three Heisman winners in 6 seasons. Like that's insane. Um, and that ability should not be taken for granted, which like Oklahoma fans, remember what I said a second ago about like the pressure of winning a Super Bowl every year, making Chiefs fans like stupid. That I feel like that's exactly what happened to Oklahoma fans with Lincoln Riley. It was like you were at such a high level where it was just championship or bust and trying to break through from getting to the playoff to winning a game in the playoff that it just drove you all crazy to undervalue and underappreciate what it is that Lincoln Riley can do as a coach and his coaching ability. So that would be my statement on that. But anyway, boom to the Sooner. I'll give you this too, boom to the Sooner. I don't like the nails thing from Caleb Williams. I do not. And I'm a guy that leans toward like swagger. I would rather have the player with swagger and cocky and all that versus, which I know seems weird because I'm a K-State fan, right? That's generally kind of the opposite archetype that my team takes on. But I'm a sucker for the guy that's going to play with a bunch of swagger like Caleb Williams. But it just the bleep Utah on the nail. I don't know. It just seems like a weird. I wouldn't be taking a shot at a team like that can like routinely beats you. There you go, Utah fans. I'm saying something nice. Like Utah routinely beats you. I just wouldn't go that route. I don't know. It seems a little childish. Like just go beat him with your play. You're clearly a warrior. I mean, the Pac-12 championship game showcased like how tough he is. We did, in fairness, say a lot of that about Duggan. Caleb Williams displayed a lot of toughness in him still going out there and finishing the game against Utah. But I mean, like it didn't go well. And so I would chill on things like that if I were him. I was not a huge fan of that. Joe, what's up, Joe? Joe says John Canzano, blah, 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 blah. I think I got them all. There were 5 blahs there. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, well, he does sometimes tend to say that. I would profess to you that there was a little more substance here with the San Diego State thing, but yeah, I get it. He wrote a very interesting article about UCLA. Also this week being kind of a school without a conference right now because they don't feel very wanted by the Big Ten or the Pac-12 as they wait for the Regents decision. I thought that was actually, it was fairly well done. Like I can understand the points that he's getting at there, but I mean, they're going to be, I mean, the Big Ten is going to be their conference. It is going to be their conference. I'm not here for a ton of smoke today to just crush anybody from Pac-12 land. Right. And a part of the reason that I can't, Joe, is because now this is not Canzano. You're talking about Canzano, but Wilner actually Wilner put us into a column. I'll call it a column. It was like a 10. He makes like 10 points and he has 10 little paragraphs. And 2 of them were about the Big 12 or the Pac-12 rather championship ratings, the TV ratings there. One where he talked about how it was the highest rated Pac-12 championship game ever. And then in the next paragraph says, the championship game ratings were mocked on Twitter, where Big 12 fans noted the figure lagged the viewership total for the TCU-Kansas State game on Saturday, even though the Pac-12 had Friday night to itself. That prompted none other than Utah Athletic Director Mark Harlan to respond to one particular tweet with 4 telling words: "We are not leaving." It was perhaps the most definitive expression of Pac-12 solidarity by an athletic director in the 5 months since USC and UCLA announced their departures. There he goes, guys. Not by name, but we made it into a Wilner column. So I think that's, deserves a nice round of applause for all of us. I think that's a victory for Big 12 Twitter, getting linked in actual Wilner articles and columns on the Pac-12 hotline now. So we did it. We did it, Joe. We did it. Thank you. Thank you for the donation, and thank you for being here, my friend. Steve, thank you for being here, and I appreciate your donation. Steve says, this can be for a future discussion, but who determines fan base numbers for schools? Oregon State states, it's confusing. Oregon states that they have a huge fan base numbers, and I don't buy it. See, that's the problem. Like, it's a really, it's a tough question to answer. And I ran into some of this when I was debating, healthy debate, lively debate with some Utah fans within the last week, when they cropped back up on me, and they were like, I had a guy saying, look, BYU claims that they have this national fan base, but really Utah has bigger numbers. It's just BYU's more spread out. And I was like, no, I mean, come on. Like, the LDS church, it's going to give you a larger number of fans across the country just because you'll pull in some casuals that way because of the tie in there. It's going to make it bigger than Utah's fan base. I am sorry. But I can't also just like look down a list. You know, you'll have like USA Today puts together a database every year of the college football coaching salaries. You can go pull that up and just right away be like, all right, here's XYZ's salary. This is what it is. I can go reference that number. I can't just go do that for a fan base. So really, honestly, Steve, like the easiest way to do it is probably just by looking at TV ratings and how many people are watching you on TV. They're not obviously all going to be fans of your school, but it's the best indicator, I think, really, that would be out there as to like how much national pull do you have. And a lot of that would be about like casual fans. Now, another thing, like the Big Ten is a good example of that, because if you go look on a given week, just any crappy Big Ten game, I guess I was going to say Illinois Northwestern, you'd probably have to go a little higher up. Like Iowa Northwestern. If Iowa Northwestern is on Fox, if that's on Big Noon Saturday on Fox, like it's going to pull a big number, like a number that the Big 12 will have a hard time competing with most of the time, just simply because there are these big fan bases in the Midwest. Like all these Big Ten fan bases are generally pretty large, and that typically reflects itself in the TV numbers. Also, you know, I mean, it's pretty easy. You could look at enrollment figures too. That's another way you could do it. Like TCU, small private school, small enrollment. It's going to be tougher for them to, you know, if you're traveling somewhere, put together a huge crowd, even at home games, a huge crowd there. It's the reality of the situation, because you guys have less people graduating from your school year in, year out. So like there are some ways you can guesstimate it, but I can't really give you like there's not a census every year. Although maybe that's a great idea. We should start the college football census. Just everybody can we get the government involved on that college football census? You just one question. Who are you a fan of? Who's your team? And then we'll take it and we can have actual fan base numbers across college football. I would actually very much enjoy that and love to see it. But I hope, Steve, I tried to do the best I could there to answer that question. As far as Oregon goes, I know you're asking about Oregon specifically. I think the appeal for Oregon there is just that they would be, I'm sure, preaching to you that they have a lot of casual fans across the country, because they were the uniforms took over everything in college football for a while. They were such a big deal because of that. They have built a brand of being like the cool team. And I mean, they recruit nationally. So like, I think that is proven to be true. I wonder if it's quite as hot as it was 10 years ago, you know, around like Marcus Mariota times. And maybe that's just a little under 10 years ago, but that seemed to me to be like the peak of Oregon's pull with casual fans. But I think there is something to that for Oregon. I don't know if it would be as big as some of their fans would lead you to believe, but I think there is some pull there, just because they turned into, everybody loved the uniforms, everybody loved the Nike connection, and all of that got them a lot of casual fans across the country. I mean, heck, even I, as a kid, like 10, 15 years ago, I mean, I thought Oregon was really cool. K-State was my team, but I definitely thought Oregon was really cool just because of all the Nike gear and uniforms and stuff that they were rolling out there every single year. Joe, what's up, Joe? Joe, I'm just seeing the laughing emoji here. I must have said something funny, which, you know, I can do that. I got a little wit to me. So I appreciate it, Joe. I don't see a comment attached there, but thank you for chipping in again. I really, really do appreciate it. Jason, what's up, Jason? Jason says, I'm an upper manager at Amazon. Would be very surprised if the Pac-12 gets anything meaningful from Amazon. We are bleeding money and Prime Video is in the red. Interesting, Jason. And I say interesting, not just because of your comment, which I very much appreciate there. We got boots on the ground, people. You see that? We've got Amazon boots on the ground reporting here on the Pac-12 media rights situation. Okay. But Jason, you say that, and I was reading Canzano, and he had a line about Amazon where he was still saying he thought Amazon could be a part of the whole deal, but it was not as definitive. The language and the tone seems to have changed a little bit on that, where for a while there, it was like very definitive that Amazon was absolutely going to be a part of it. And now we're seeing the TV negotiations get drawn out. Kliavkoff struggling here to maintain some of the momentum with that and not getting a deal done and having to resort to pushing off Deion Sanders is a part of the reason that it hasn't gotten done yet. And then this, which I had not gotten to yet, but this from Bob Thompson, who is the former head of Fox Sports. He was responding to an article that John Wilner tweeted out that said Commissioner George Kliavkoff explained the delay in Pac-12 media rights, said media companies don't do business in the second half of December. Well, Bob Thompson, again, former head of Fox Sports, responds to that on Twitter and says, don't remember that aspect of my job over 25 plus years. Okay, all right, there's a grenade thrown at George. But he followed it up too, because I took that and, well, I did exactly that. I tweeted a GIF of a grenade, and Bob Thompson responded to my tweet and said, seems to be this myth that media people don't work. Many put in a full day at the office. It says many put in a full day at the office, then are at an event in the evening, then are on the road over the weekend at more events. Would be like me saying that a college administrator takes the entire summer off. Neither is correct. So Bob Thompson was pretty tweaked by that comment. And I think that is telling, not just because, look, Bob Thompson is no longer the head of Fox Sports, but if Bob Thompson is thinking like that, and he took some offense to that, and he's a guy working in sports media right now, how do we think those comments were received by the current head of Fox Sports or people at ESPN or Amazon or Apple or whoever that might be at the negotiating table here? That doesn't seem like a very smart thing to say, even if there may be some truth to it. Apparently, it has tweaked some there. So this just seems to me to be more of like, Kliavkoff just loses in the perception battle. He is very much outdueled in the marketing aspect of things by Yormark. And that continues to be very, very true, in my humble opinion, with what we're seeing here and how that little interaction played out. The fact that Bob Thompson, who has been, I mean, he certainly is very friendly with Canzano and Wilner. And, Canzano had him, well, I had another little blurb from Canzano talking to him. Yeah, it was about the Deion comment. He said, quote, I can't imagine the TV guys sitting there going, now Deion's there, so let's pay them more money for a deal that won't start for a couple of years, which is a very fair point and something easy to forget. Even when I kind of defended George last week about the Deion thing, that is true. It's not going to happen for a couple of years. Who the hell knows if Deion's going to be around in a couple of years at Colorado? But my point is he speaks to Canzano regularly. Canzano has used his info and quoted him many a time here. So he would not be doing this just to take a pot shot. Like, he's been friendly with those guys and is an Oregon grad himself. So, he's got a vested interest, I would think, in the Pac-12 from that standpoint. Anyway, that criticism does not come just out of left field. I think that's legit. So interesting you say that, Jason, because it does make me wonder, like, is the tide starting to turn there and Amazon backing off? And it would be another thing pushing in the direction of the Pac-12 not being in real great shape there with that media rights deal right now. We'll see. But that to me seems to be more along those lines. Daniel, what's up, Daniel? Daniel, I appreciate you being here. Thank you for the donation. Really appreciate you, man. Daniel says the Heisman has always been a popularity contest. That is true. I mean, that is true. When I kind of outline the differences between those two guys, it's like, look, Max Duggan is not going to ever win. Nothing against Max Duggan. He's never going to win a popularity contest across the wide scope of the country, and casual fans and people who are just the Stephen A. Smiths of the world who are just going to drop in and watch college football because there are far more of them than there are the diehards like us that are here on a YouTube channel every single week watching it and talking about it. You're just going to have a hard time winning them over in any sort of popularity contest. And so that I do think has played out here. And the other aspect of it, Daniel, is that it just turns into best quarterback on the best team award, which I would make the case once again that there is some legitimacy to it, and just that a quarterback makes so much more of a difference on a football field than any other player out there. But we probably have overcorrected too much on that front. When we're throwing freaking Stetson Bennett into the Heisman finalist group and taking him to New York, we have overcorrected too much on that front. So you are correct, Daniel. And Stetson Bennett, part of that. I mean, popularity contest, people see him all the time. He's playing for the best team in the country. He's playing with 500 NFL players every single year on that roster at Georgia. So that helps. And yes, I think does have a tendency to turn it into more of a popularity contest. Boom to the Sooner. What's up, Boom to the Sooner? Boom to the Sooner says, how mad would Michigan fans be if they lost in the title game by a game-winning field goal to an Ohio State team that snuck into the playoff? can't imagine how wrecked Michigan fans would be if they lost after winning in Columbus, winning the way that they did, winning without Blake Corum, then to have to face Ohio State again in the title game when a lot of people would feel like Ohio State was not deserving to make the playoff and do it again and then lose in the playoff. That would be the ultimate. I'm not sure that there would be, I don't know, would there ever have been a darker day in Michigan football history than that? You could hold up like the App State loss or something, but not the significance, not the stakes, not the bragging rights that would be snatched right back away from Ryan Day. The other part of it is they've got Ryan Day on the ropes right now. I mean, Day is already taking tons of heat from Ohio State fans, even though he has a ridiculous record since being the coach there, but he's lost back-to-back games to Harbaugh and Michigan. So it's like Ryan Day, you're getting to make fun of him. You're living off of 2 straight years of winning the game. It's been a while because of COVID. It's been a really long time since Ohio State's actually won this game. So many bragging rights right now. Day on his heels. Ohio State fans, the whole thing in flux. Can they fire? Can they get rid of him if he keeps all that stuff? And then it would just go away like that if they beat you in the national championship game. So it would be crazy. But I'm going to hope TCU's there and not Michigan. How about they lose to TCU on a game-winning field goal, huh? Lose to TCU on a game-winning field goal and then see what happens in that championship game. Big 12, number 1, BYU. Thank you for the donation, my friend. Thank you for being here. Really, really appreciate it. Big 12, number 1, BYU. Says Utah fans are going to pollute the Big 12. They are a bunch of mean-as fans. If they're added to the Big 12, it would be an incurable disease worse than Texas and Oklahoma. Wow. I'm 100% against them joining. Let them crash and burn with the Pac-12. Woo! Big 12, number 1, BYU, bringing it strong there to the Utah fans. Well, I have definitely experienced my fair share of Utah fans. They absolutely I will just tell Utah fans right now, I barely saw any of your actual reaction to my tweet about you guys having a great program, but needing to understand your place in the college football world better. Twitter will filter mentions by, like, if there are people that you have not interacted with, it generally will not show me the @ there on a post that's like that popular. So basically I saw none of it, but I would just check back and see the replies, and I would see that there were like 50, then 80, then 100, then 120. I don't know, man. I got up to like almost 200 replies into that thing. So I was like, okay, well, this made people mad. They were frustrated with it. But I did not actually read very much of it. So sorry. And I stand by my statement. Utah's got a very good football program. They have an excellent coach, and they think too highly of themselves in the course of where they fall in the college football landscape. Again, something I said I can relate to because my squad, K-State, wins a lot more than people realize, but yet does not have a real seat at the table when it comes to, big boy college, like chance at getting into one of the Power 2, if I'm going to take a phrase that I saw from Purdue fans this past week, like one of the Power 2 conferences, right? That was the point that I was making. Now, the thing here, Big 12 number 1 BYU, is I don't think you're going to have to worry about them being in the Big 12 anytime soon because, again, their AD just responded to me last week and said, we are not leaving. Now, he did that in part to take a shot at USC and claim that they are the best brand and not USC in the Pac-12, but also it was a public show of solidarity there, as Wilner referenced. So I understand why you say that, Big 12 number 1 BYU, because I have experienced a couple run-ins now with BYU fans here. And boy, they do think awful highly of themselves. They sure do. The other thing they didn't like me saying was that the Big 12's got the best football brand in its conference already from Utah. And that, of course, being BYU, which, of course, because national fan base, the history, all that. And I will stand by that statement and believe it, even if Utah does, again, have a very good football program right now, the way that they are rolling. So we'll see, Big 12 number 1 BYU. Maybe it does happen eventually, but I don't know. It almost feels like the more likely thing to happen would be you could get the other 3 four-corner schools and then throw in like San Diego State or something, as opposed to just getting all of the 4 corner schools, because it just does not appear to be headed in that direction for Utah at all, which makes all the sense in the world. Utah right now is just running the Pac-12, and why would they want to leave? It's working out pretty well for them right now. They would seemingly want to keep that together and keep it running. Fred, what's up, Fred? Wow, we got a Colorado fan in here. Fred says, how about those Buffs? Colorado is wildly intriguing now, Fred. I have a lot of thoughts on Colorado. I'll try to condense this as much as I can because we're already over an hour here on the show. But look, Colorado was a rival of K-State's when Bill Snyder really had it humming. He finally broke through and beat him in 1997. But I was even thinking in my head, I was like, man, of all the times I've been to Boulder or watched K-State play in Boulder, they won there in 98, they won there in 2000, and then like every other time since I was alive, they lost in Boulder. It was like a house of horrors. Like that was a really good program and just a tough place for K-State to go play every single time when K-State was in the middle of winning 11 games every single year. They had a hell of a time, even then with Colorado. Not a lot of love lost between me and Colorado fans, although I do have a nice story of when I went there as a student one time. Colorado students were pretty friendly to me, but it's a story for another day. Either way, one time I also did have beer bottles put under my car tires that had a K-State logo on the side of it when I went to Boulder. So I guess not always have the students been so kind to me. Either way, a lot of mixed feelings about Colorado there. But there is a piece of me that was like, this is a great part of college football history that now is just decrepit. I mean, like, Folsom Field is cool. I've been there multiple times, but it seems like it's kind of old and falling apart, needs a facelift. It's just like nobody seemed to care. And it was a little bit sad to me that like there was just so much apathy with Colorado football. And so I do think Deion being there, at least, like there is a piece of me that's like, that will be cool just to have Colorado be a little bit relevant again. Now, would I be heartbroken if this is a total failure and Deion, which to me feels like wild success or wild failure, winds up on the wild failure end? No, there would not be a lot of love lost for me and the people of Boulder. But I'm very much here for them being entertaining and being a place where we can go see what Deion actually does at this level. So I would be excited. Plenty of reason to be excited if I were you, Fred. Plenty of reason to be excited. And it will be, I can't wait to see what this roster actually looks like. And Deion has done a great job of hiring assistant coaches from what I've seen so far. I've actually been pretty impressed by that too. So anyway, Fred, exciting times for you as a Colorado fan. I am sure. Robert, what's up, Robert? Robert says, former Big 12 QBs, give some love to Baker and Hurts. Yeah, of course. Baker Mayfield, Jalen Hurts. Okay, I see what you're saying. You're not saying in the Heisman conversation. You're saying back to the conversation about Purdy and in the NFL. Hey, Baker Mayfield, that was a crazy moment, and I love that it came at the expense of an AFC West rival, the Chiefs. So I love that. I also love that he didn't know how to get to the locker room when he was leaving the press conference after the game and had to ask somebody. And I love that he just straight up said, I couldn't believe they were in press coverage there in that situation. And yeah, Jalen Hurts, awesome this year. I've not watched a lot of NFL outside of the Chiefs, to be completely honest, but I am aware of the season that Jalen Hurts is having. So yes, Big 12 quarterback, just barely for Jalen Hurts there, but yes, he is Big 12 QB. Big 12 number 1 BYU checking in again. Appreciate you, Big 12 number 1 BYU. Says K-State, or go K-State. Yes, appreciate that. Go K-State. Ute fans throw beer cans at BYU players and fans. This is a true fact. They will do that to all religious schools in the Big 12. Is this where do I bring TCU fans? Do I bring it up? You guys you're probably sick of me telling the story about everything I heard about K-State's trip to Fort Worth this year, and TCU fans throwing the beer there too. So it might happen some other places in the Big 12 too. Speaking of Colorado, Colorado was always the stuff batteries in snowballs and throw those. Mizzou, you got a little bit of that with Mizzou too. Oh boy, Mizzou this weekend in hoops. Boy, Kansas took it right to Mizzou, and they've been dunking on Eli Drinkwitz for holding up a sign in the student section and all that. So I guess my point here would be Big 12 number 1 BYU. They wouldn't be totally alone if that is the case. I don't think. You're always going to get a little bit of that in the college football world, just because people are crazy. But yes, would I find that to be terribly shocking? Not necessarily, but I'll have to take your word for it. Big 12 number 1 BYU. Fred says, is Colorado coming to the Big 12? Well, if you ask Tim Brando, seems a certainty. I don't know where the hell Tim Brando gets off saying that he feels like that. Whatever. And look, to be honest, I didn't listen to the full interview on Sikkim 365. If you want to know a funny story, and most of you guys that have been here for a while, you know how I feel about Tim Brando. I've had enough of him, having to watch him and listen to him throughout college football season, that on YouTube, I just opened up YouTube earlier today, just chilling on the couch. First video that popped up was the one where he went on Sikkim 365 to talk about Colorado and the Big 12, whatever his theory is. I was was like, maybe I should listen to this just for the sake of the channel and knowing what's going on. I got about 20 seconds into Brando talking. I just couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. Had to leave. So I have not actually like heard what he said there. But I mean, maybe I think it's possible. Maybe Fred at some point. They're certainly higher up the ladder than Utah in terms of likelihood of the four corner schools to actually come to the Big 12. But there has been no significant movement or development on that front in terms of where it is going right now. I will just at least say that. All right, getting close to the end of the donations here. So if you have some, I mean, this is like a 2-minute warning. We'll say like a 2-3 minute warning here. If you have anything that you want to get it in right now. Click the $ below the chat box where it says say something. This is the Hail Mary spot for it because we're almost done. Going overtime a little bit here. Ben says, still think Oregon and Washington might be left on red by the Big Ten, and they jump to the Big 12 to give us that Pacific time zone market. Left on red is a good term, and I think a pretty good way to describe the situation right now between Oregon and Washington in the Big Ten, a la Oregon and Washington sending some text messages there. The Big Ten not actually responding, but leaving those red receipts up so they can see that the Big Ten read the message and just didn't care to actually respond, and being sort of stuck in that situation. Like, all right, well, what does that mean? Am I going to get a response? It's very anxiety inducing, but I don't know. I still feel like it's pretty unlikely that is going to happen. I don't mean to like laugh at the question, because we did definitely talk about that a lot back like in July when all this first happened. But I mean, it seems like with an expanded playoff coming, especially, there's just really not as much need to do that. They can just wait it out as long as they can in the Pac-12 before that blows up or they get invited or whatever. It wouldn't have to go change one conference just to know that they're eventually going to leave for another conference in a couple of years also. And they'll still enjoy playoff access from the Pac-12. As long as they can go through and win that league, they'll still have playoff access from the Pac-12 there. So I think the dynamics have changed to where that's not a very likely scenario to play out at all. We got Michael. What's up, Michael? Michael, thank you for the donation. Thank you for being here, my friend. Michael says, hailing in from Podunk, Central Florida, otherwise known as Apopka, Florida. Apopka, Florida. First, congrats to K-State. Hell of a win. Second, Kliavkoff is coming off as a wet noodle. Just looking for a lifeline windfall. Well, I appreciate the congratulations there, Michael. Thank you very much. And yeah, I mean, wet noodle. I like the term wet noodle. He comes across to me as like a guy that seemingly is in a bit over his head right now and just is getting outmaneuvered on the marketing scene by Brett Yormark for sure. And he's already had the Big Ten pull a fast one on him, right? He already had Kevin Warren just kind of use him for the alliance thing and then steal his best schools and brands out from under him. And now is out here struggling to keep up with Brett Yormark, who's just, both leagues have talked to Gonzaga. Yormark's the one that generated a big headline because of it. Both leagues were after a new TV deal. Yormark came in and got it done with the two big players, ESPN and Fox, before Kliavkoff, when that was supposed to be a big advantage of the Pac-12, was that they would be at the table first. Like he's getting outmaneuvered. I don't know that you can point to a lot that he's done so far and be like, all right, there's a guy who's on the cutting edge, who's thinking out in front of everybody else and making moves that really matter for the Pac-12. We're just not seeing a lot of that. He's come across as kind of whiny. The grenades comment, the stuff about you continuously fighting and saying that UCLA would make more money by staying. His comment that they're going to catch up to the SEC and Big Ten financially eventually, stupid. I mean, it just a lot of things that come across as a guy who is in over his head. So yeah, if you want to call it a wet noodle, I'm here for it. But he just doesn't seem like a guy that I would be super confident in right now. I certainly wouldn't. And I will say it's a little bit quiet in Pac-12 corners of the world right now. There's not a lot even of like the spin stuff going on right now. It's just gone a little quiet, which to me would indicate that there may be a little bit of trouble afoot there for the Pac-12. We'll see. Maybe Kliavkoff comes back with some massive TV deal, but I don't know. It's not feeling like it right now. I think Alpha Cat is going to send us off on this. Alpha Cat says, thanks again, John. Now Yellowstone. All right. Well, it's not going to be Yellowstone for me, but I'm going to go try and find something on the TV. I was actually watching last night. I started the documentary about the guy who tried to win the Pepsi Harrier jet or whatever. Like that. Was that Netflix? I think it's a Netflix documentary. I fell asleep partway through, so I got to finish that. But that may be what I finish up with here. Anyway, thank you everybody for being here. As always, tell your friends about this. Social media, friends, family, word of mouth, Facebook groups, fans of different teams, fans of the league, wherever it is that you can find a place to spread the word about this channel. I would much appreciate it. John Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you want to support the channel and you did not have a chance to do so already, or you're catching this after the fact. Like the video, comment on the video. All of those things really help, and they are totally free as well. If you have anything for me, hit me up on Twitter. It's at JL Kurtz on Twitter. I try to be pretty responsive there if you do. And with that, I bid you adieu. We'll talk to you midweek. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Hope you have a great start to your week, and I will talk to you guys soon.